Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. This is AMA number 57. It is April. Good morning, good afternoon. Oh, getting the feedback. It is April 22nd, 2021. This is AMA number 57. I'm trying to not hear myself as I speak. There we go. It is April 22nd, AMA number 57. Today's guest will be Benjamin Lorch, podcasting guru and Berlin proto-hipster. By being my guest today, one could say that Benjamin Lorch is on the 57th AMA. Benjamin Lorch is passenger 57 in some sense. Forgotten movie with, I feel it was with like Wesley Snipes. Anyway, good morning, Saul Schachter from freezing New York. Krakow also freezing. The weather has absolutely mirrored. Krakow and New York have had really the same weather. Jeffrey Rolat, good morning from poolside. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey. Why aren't I here with you? Because someone needs to hold down the fort in Krakow. I will be there hopefully. Kasha and I will be there hopefully soon enough. Don't worry, careful what you wish for, Jeffrey Rolat. But I'm glad that somebody's enjoying the good weather. And Benji Lovett, I just realized Benji and then Benjamin. So next week, maybe will next week's guest also have a Benji type name? We will see. Poland, first let's talk a little bit about the COVID situation. Poland loosening COVID restrictions. Does that mean that it's getting better in Poland? Not necessarily, but as of next week, primary schools, the first 3 classes will open, first 3 grades, and hair and beauty salons can open. To be honest, I walk on my block. There's a very fancy hair salon, and it seems like it's open all the time. So I don't know exactly about what's going on with that. Oh, good morning, Randy from lovely Palo Alto. Palo Alto is lovely. Good morning. Poland accelerates vaccine rollout. So as of the 9th of May, everybody will be able to register. It doesn't mean that everybody will get the vaccine by then, but everybody at any age will be able to register by May 9th. And I think that the idea is that we will, people will be vaccinated, the whole country will be vaccinated by August, which I hope so. Benji, you need a good hair salon, among other things. Benji. Angie, hi Angie. Angie, one of our all-star volunteers, longtime volunteers at the JCC. We miss you, Angie. Angie, possibly the queen of the volunteers at the JCC, and the long-suffering Kasha Leonardi. Katka Reshke, Massachusetts in the house. Massachusetts by way of Wrocław. Hello, Katka Reshke. Good to see you. And how is Noel Windrush? I just like saying the name Windrush. Hope you guys are doing well in Massachusetts, and hopefully things will get a little bit better and you'll be able to visit us here soon back in Poland, in Krakow. What's happened this week in Poland? Well, we had the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was the 78th anniversary. That was big news in Poland and of course all across the world. Poland, I think, does a pretty good job all across the country of commemorating that. Of course, the most well-known aspect of the commemoration are the daffodils, the little daffodils designed by Helena Chernik, that was sort of in conjunction with the Polish Museum that people put, and they usually volunteers all over the country, or Warsaw, Krakow, give them out. And but this year it happened, but in much smaller numbers because of the situation. Marcel Zielinski, good morning from Montreal. How are you, Marcel? Hope that your leg is doing better. We of course send our best wishes to you and Marilla, and I think you should be swimming along with Marilla. You do have that beautiful pool in the building, and I think you should. I know you're a cyclist, Marcel, but I think swimming also would be good for you. I know that you won't be able to keep up with Marilla, but she can teach you to swim. Krakow also in the news for a funny reason this week, which was somebody took a photo and sent it to in Krakow in the tree. They thought there was a very strange looking wild animal in a tree, and they sent it to the Krakow Department of Protection of Animals, and they said it looked like a lagoon. Actually, before she couldn't remember the word for iguana, so in Polish it's sort of funny, the word for lagoon and iguana. And anyway, it turned out that what the woman saw in the tree was a croissant, and this of course made headlines around the world. Everyone likes to laugh at us here in Poland that there was a wild croissant in the tree, and there's even a bakery around the corner where if you buy a croissant, I think they donate the money. Some part of the money goes to the purchase price goes to the animal rights organization here, one of them in Krakow. So Krakow in the news. So something interesting I thought I would bring up today, and I want to get your feedback on this, which is somebody on Facebook, actually a friend on Facebook who works for the Times of Israel, named Sarah Tuttle Singer. She posted something on Facebook and she said, what are some unpopular opinions that you guys have? And there were like more than 1,000 comments. Hers, the one that started it all, her comment was that she liked gefilte fish, which certainly in Poland is not so uncommon. Kasia, my wife, chef, Kasia loves gefilte fish. So my dad growing up, my dad liked gefilte fish, but seems like something that wouldn't be so popular. Hold on, Pani Zosha in the house. Stop everything. Pani Zosha, who I visited this morning. Pani Zosha, albo niswisha, albo nividze. Are you saying that you don't hear me or see me? Well, as if you hear me, Sebastian will be in touch with you and help figure out your tech issues, Pani Zosha, but thank you for joining in. But anyway, so the question of what are some unpopular opinions that you hold? And I said hers was gefilte fish. My unpopular opinions, which were very somewhat controversial. And if you guys have unpopular opinion, in other words, things that you generally disagree with what most of the world thinks is true. If you have a contrary opinion, right? Unpopular in the sense that everybody loves something and you hate it, or everybody hates something and you love it, something like that. So I'm going to tell you what my unpopular opinions were. One, wait, before I get to it, my dad is watching. Hello, Sita, and Saturday is your birthday. Happy birthday, Sita. Sita is a friend, and she takes very, very good care of my father, who has his ups and downs with health as we know. So good to see you, Sita, and hello, Dad. Saul Schachter jumping in right away. I love disco. Saul Schachter, of course you love disco. Of course you do. Linda Krar, Boker Tov, Linda. How are you? So I'm going to give you my unpopular opinions, and you guys can tell me your unpopular opinions too. Katka, I love matzah. People like matzah. I don't know if that's totally unpopular, but all right. One of my unpopular opinions was that I find the TV show Friends banal and not funny. Not that it's such a terrible show, but everybody, ooh, Friends, I love Friends. I never thought it was particularly clever. It just seemed so obvious to me, everything going on the show Friends. To me, shocking that became such a worldwide hit. That was my first one. The second one is that I don't really like how in the United States that you thank soldiers for their service and thank only soldiers. So not that I have a problem with thanking soldiers, but if you're going to thank soldiers for their service, then you should thank teachers and nurses and healthcare workers and people who work with the disabled and all these jobs that are somewhat thankless in society, but without them, society doesn't run. So that was a controversial, as we say, a hot take, that one. I also feel that voting should be mandatory. So it shouldn't be like, if you're going to live in a democracy, there are benefits of living in a democracy. In other words, you have decisions are made by some degree, and at least in a representative democracy, not a pure democracy, by those who are elected by people. So the will of the people is done. But voting should be mandatory. There's a price for democracy, and I think that price is participation and vigilance. And certain countries like Australia, if you don't vote, you get fined. And I think that the United States, I would be very happy to see that in the United States. I would be happy to see that in Poland as well. Voting should be mandatory. Then I also said religions, and this one, don't listen to this part. Sita, if you could cover my dad's ears for this part. I said religions equal cults plus time. So what was my idea about that? My idea was that we refer to certain things as cults and certain things are religions, but really, is there much of a difference between cults and religions? In my opinion, not much. If a cult is old enough, it becomes a religion. So that was one. I see Benji, Larry, David on Curb Your Enthusiasm is rarely an asshole. He usually has the moral high ground. I agree. I watch, when Kasha and I watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, Kasha agrees with Larry David all the time and thinks he's completely right about everything. So there you go. And Linda says, thank everyone who wears a mask and follows safety precautions while we're at it. Yeah, fair enough, Linda. Again, not against the soldiers, but it just feels like if I'm pointing out somebody in a society that needs to be particularly thanked for their role in a society, I don't know that soldiers are the only ones who should be in that category, was my take. My next one was that intermarriage is good for the Jewish people. Now, I should really clarify, I think I was trying to be just a little bit provocative there. I think that really I meant intermarriage can be good for the Jewish people. I don't think it's automatically good for the Jewish people. I think intermarriage can be good for the Jewish people. So that was a take. Anna Maria Barua, tour guide to the stars. Krakow's favorite tour guide. How are you, Anna Maria Barua? Good to see you on here. So that about intermarriage, which is not, I don't know that that's not my original idea about intermarriage, just that this automatic thing, this idea that we automatically, intermarriage is bad, we have to avoid intermarriage. I don't know. I think the idea is we're into continuity and we want the children of that couple we feel will be less likely to be Jewish. So my feeling is just do a better job of welcoming the non-Jewish partner into the Jewish people, and then we won't have such problems with intermarriage. And I felt that my favorite take on intermarriage ever was by Joy Levitt, and she wrote an op-ed, and I forgot with whom she wrote it, but she co-authored it. And she said that when you marry somebody Jewish, it should be the default setting should be that you're part of the Jewish people and you should have to opt out. So, you married somebody Jewish, you're in unless you choose to be out. So that would be that I would agree with her on that. Randy says if intermarriage adds to the gene pool, it might be good for the Jewish people. Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am into that. And my another one, I said vaccination should be mandatory. To me, that's a no-brainer. You're walking around society, or you should not be allowed out of your house. Vaccination should be mandatory, and if you're not vaccinated, you can't leave your house, because we live in a society where there's interaction. Why do you need to affect and infect other people? My other one, which is complicated with Stephen M. Cohen. Yeah, Stephen M. Cohen, he's a little less quotable these days. He's not a little less, not to joke about it, but Stephen M. Cohen is sort of, it's had a lot of controversy around him. The other one, which was that the Holocaust was a victory. I think what I mean by that is that we need to see the Holocaust in the context of other calamities that have befallen the Jewish people, whereas the idea is that the goal was to terminate the Jewish people, and they wasn't successful. Purim, for example, and we celebrate the idea that it wasn't a success. Well, the Holocaust also took a tremendous toll on the Jewish people, clearly, and we in Krakow are dealing with that every single day, as many communities around the world, obviously. But at the end of the day, the goal was to destroy the Jewish people, and they were unsuccessful. The Nazis, the Germans, and their accomplices were unsuccessful. Therefore, for the Jewish people, it was a victory because, hey, we're still here. We are still here. Mir seinen do. So that's my sense. Now, Kasha had some hot takes. I asked Kasha about this this morning or last night, and because I was curious about Kasha's unpopular opinions, and Kasha felt that sell-by dates were overrated. That if the yogurt is 2 weeks past its date. Kasha has no problem at least trying it. I don't do it. Kasha feels that Starbucks coffee is terrible. Kasha doesn't like food trucks. Food trucks are overrated. She said, especially in Poland, food trucks aren't so good. And this is more for New Yorkers, certainly for Americans. Kasha hated Dear Evan Hansen, which is a very popular play. Also, we don't like Levain cookies in New York. Also pretty unpopular. It's very popular cookie place, which I think are terrible. And Kasha also didn't like Las Vegas. We had a good time in Las Vegas. Jeffrey, don't get upset, Jeffrey and Lori. But Kasha felt that Las Vegas was depressing. Las Vegas was depressing. I guess a lot of people might feel that, but that was Kasha's take. Oh, and also that couples that, and this is an interesting hot take. Lovey-dovey couples are doomed. If a couple is overly lovey-dovey, we feel that they're doomed. And I agree with Kasha on that one. So those are the hot takes. If you have your hot takes, you can also post them during the show. Katka says Las Vegas is depressing. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know how much of a hot take, but it's a good one. I like that take, whether it's a hot take or not. So let's get to it. My guest today is a very, very interesting guy. He is a podcast guru. He founded the Berlin School of Podcasting. He's worked in radio. He's an educator. He's done running intercultural exchange programs in Berlin. He worked to set up different MBA programs in Berlin, and was doing many, many interesting things. A long time resident of Berlin. He was a Robert Bosch Fellow, which is also interesting. He worked in the Chicago public school system before he got to Berlin. And you might know him best as the one who brought Latka hamantash to Krakow. He brought it from University of Chicago, where he matriculated, to Krakow. And so with no further ado, my guest, my good friend, Benjamin Lorch.
Hello, Jonathan. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me here on the AMA.
How are you, Benjamin?
Excuse me, Jonathan, just for a moment. Mr. Ishiguri, no, the debate only happens once a year. Please don't talk to Mr. Braunschweig until... Yes, Mr. Ishiguri, yes. Okay, sorry, Jonathan. There's a lot going on here at the Institute of Advanced Latka hamantash Studies, but I carved out a little bit of... One of my assistants said I could make it to this meeting. I'm just happy to be here for this AMA. Is that what it's called? Yes. Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Professor Lorch, if I may, of course, I will bestow this professorship on you for your contributions made.
One of many professorships I have. Yes, thank you.
And I think it is actually an acknowledged term, Latka hamantashology.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I have plenty to talk about that. Yes, today. Yes.
So, I mean, I was going to ask you about podcasting and many other things, but let's talk really about probably the feather in your cap as in your distinguished career as an academic and one who facilitates learning and academic, the Latka hamantash Advanced Institute for Latka hamantash investigations.
Yes, well, certainly, if you don't mind, I'd like to show you a little bit around our facility. I've prepared, please. Well, I have many people that prepare these things for me. So yes. This is actually our main building, and I just wanted to show you, how it's designed. You'll see we have two wings, the Latke wing and the hamantash wing here. Uh-huh. And, we don't let those two research institutes, they're technically two different institutes. They only meet on one day of the year, which of course is the debate day. And so this is true.
Now I've read about this, actually. I think it was an Architectural Digest. Is it true that yes. There's no connection between them except one bridge that's elevated, which is modeled exactly on the bridge that Star Wars, that Luke Skywalker fought with Darth Vader? You'll
see it right here. You'll see and it's in black, just like in the Death Star. Yes. And that's what we call the bridge, the Death Star. That's right. That's where we hold the debate. That room is hermetically sealed on every day of the, 364 days of the year. But on the debate day, we allow people in from various sides, and then we have a very cordial, usually cordial meeting
Now,
until they bring out the food.
So I have a very important question that maybe you can help me with. Now, clearly, in my mind, and many of us who are at least amateur latka hamantashologists, as I consider myself,
yes.
Feel that the entire Star Wars 9 films, the entire story was really only a metaphor for latka hamantash. In other words, if you look at the TIE fighter, there's a clear latka element, a clear hamantash element to the wings, whereas a TIE fighter is clearly latka inspired.
You know, I'm just so happy to know that you're a subscriber to our Institute's journal, because that was the lead article back, I believe it was the January edition. Absolutely, the work that Mr. Ishiguri has done on that, the gentleman I was speaking to earlier, it's just an incredible article that he wrote. It took us a while to get it translated out of Old Aramaic, which he wrote it in, and then into Japanese, and then from Japanese into, did you read? I assume you read it in Hebrew, but it's been published now in I think 36 different languages.
Well, I was very excited to see Professor Igashuri finally get his due by being awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship this year.
Yes. Well, since the incident in 1978, at that debate, that sort of renegade debate, things haven't been the same. But I think, I'm sorry I even brought that up. Anyway, Jonathan, sorry, I have such a busy day. I think I've just jumped into my work, and I don't want to, I'm sure you have many questions that you have for me and my work in this role, but I'm a busy guy doing a lot of different things. I'm happy to talk more about the debate or anything you wish on the AMA today. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was sort of thinking maybe we'd go a little bit and sort of get away from that, and then of course bring it all back, as all things do eventually come back to latka hamantashology.
That would be great. That would be great. Let me just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to step into my sound studio for the rest of this conversation. This is something we just added on to the Latke Hamantash Institute here. So it's a better place. It's a place I'm a little more comfortable speaking to you from.
I see. And yeah, and of course, the Institute, famous for beyond the Sky Bridge, the famous from Star Wars, but also very well known for the kitchen there, where you have the separate groups working year-round on the new techniques for latka and hamantash.
That's right. I just want to get out of the way. This is part of the kitchen. It's a very technical kitchen, but it's a place that I like to spend some time when I get hungry. Yeah, we go down there a lot, and just spend some time.
Well, I heard something, and I have to just dispel this. I know we're gonna leave latka hamantash for a second, but sure. I heard something that horrified me so much that I need to just bring it up with you, because I have to tell you, I woke up the last few nights sweating and screaming, and Kasha couldn't calm me down. And again, it wasn't necessarily in a reputable journal that I read this. It might have been in the Polish, I can't remember even where I saw it, or if it was just a hallucination. But I had read.
I'm a little worried about you, Jonathan.
There was a movement to come up with a combined latka and hamantash, a hamantatka, or a latkash, if you will. And I thought that was just going against. It was like an island of Dr. Moreau situation of just creating these things that have no business on this planet.
My professional obligations, I'm just silenced. My professional obligations just, I don't know if I can even address that in a live forum, Jonathan. I think that's better talked about elsewhere.
It reeked of eugenics. It reeked of eugenics, Benjamin.
Well, there's always been good eugenics and bad eugenics, and that's bad eugenics. Well,
let's leave the world of latka hamantash for a moment, Benjamin. Sure. And if I may, so I have a feeling that you're not originally from Berlin.
That's true. I am not originally from Berlin. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Yes. I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts. Yes.
Brookline. So not Brooklyn.
Brookline, right. I am part of the Brookline Jewish Mafia, as we are known. There are many famous Jews from Brookline.
Now,
and I am one of the semi-famous Jews.
If the Jews from Brooklyn fought the Jews from Brookline, what would the result be in your?
It would be a very uneven match. I hate to admit that I think the Brooklynites would probably take it.
Yeah. Then you also have Lynbrook on Long Island. You don't want to get them involved.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of alliances that.
So based on the fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, based on the fact that you have 2 degrees from the University of Chicago, I feel in a pre-COVID world, you probably lived also in Chicago.
I did. I spent a lot of time. True? I like to say that I came of age in Chicago. I moved to Chicago when I was 17. I was shipped off to the University of Chicago and was an undergraduate there and spent 4 years suffering under the weight of the university, where fun goes to die.
Is it just because, I was going to say, is it because its reputation as an Arizona State-esque party school, did that start when you got there, or is that?
That started, yeah. I was responsible for putting a few more telephones. In the old days, they rated us, the schools, by telephones for social behavior, and I was responsible for adding a few telephones to the university. But it's a serious place. But I'm glad I went there. I'm very glad I went there, and I support my alma mater. But I stayed in Chicago for my undergraduate, and then I came back to Boston and lived in Boston for a few years. And then I went back to Chicago because I had very, very, very important priorities in my life, and those priorities were blues music, a girlfriend, and theater. And those 3 things were in Chicago, and those 3 things were not in Boston at that time. So I returned to Chicago and stayed there another nearly 12 years, I guess it was, or a decade.
So I understand that Boston is home to no blues music, not one theater, and there are no women in Boston.
I wouldn't say that, but the blues music, the theater, and the woman that was important to me were in the Midwest. So I went back to
it was a specific woman. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah. I thought you'd gone to Chicago just to look for women.
No.
A woman, a specific woman.
A woman, yes.
Yes. Mea culpa.
No problem.
Now, how did you get, is where you were fully inculcated and inundated with latke and hamantash, of course, at the University of Chicago, the home.
That's correct.
The spiritual home and home. Few people know, and you've done a lot of work with this, of the, everyone knows about the nuclear reactor under the football field of Chicago. Of course, a school famous for its football.
Yes, was, no longer.
Right, but a few people know about the latke hamantash test laboratory, also deeper under the football field.
That's right. Yeah, they're still testing down there. I happen to know. I have a key. I used to work across the street and was able to access that facility. I actually worked in the astrophysics building, astronomy and astrophysics building, and there was a small underground sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, a passageway that you could get into the latke hamantash testing facility and core pile. That was underneath the core pile that Enrico Fermi originally built there. But yes, that's all true. What you said is all true. Yes. And I attended my first debate in 1989. The incredible Ted Cohen was the moderator, and it was a great event. And I attended as many of them as I could throughout the years while I was in Chicago. And when I came to Krakow and met you very early on, and I always feel so fortunate to have that be the case. I thought this festival, the Festival of Jewish Culture there in Krakow, is wonderful, and the JCC is incredible. But there wasn't a lot of comedy. There was a lot of music, there was a lot of culture, a lot of food, but I didn't find a lot of comedy. And I thought, what could be better than the debate? And so this idea sort of came to me, and because of the nature of the festival, I just started stopping people on the street and explaining, hey, what would you think if we did this, if we launched this here? And people liked it. And then someone said, you should go talk to Jonathan Ornstein. He'll help you out. And so that's how I began. And I walked through your door maybe for the second or third time, and then we proposed that. And so very happy that we've been able to do it at the JCC for so many years now.
I said, who is this well-dressed man in a straw boater who obviously had just been on the river Cam?
That's right.
and who then came in with this idea. And I said, you had me at the straw hat, Benjamin.
My straw hat is somewhere. Maybe I'll put it on for the second part of the AMA. Maybe for the M in AMA.
There you go. Do you? So tell us how you got to Berlin. Since we've now I did, as I have uncovered this fact that you are not from Berlin.
That's true. I now consider myself a Berliner. I've lived here 15 years. And so Berlin is a city of immigrants, believe it or not. And there are many, many people from all over the world. So I'm considered to be a Berliner, or Wahlberliner, as it's said, which Wahl means by choice. So I'm a Berliner by choice now.
A Berliner in the sense that, are you a Berliner in the sense that Kennedy was a Berliner? Are you a donut?
I'm not that type of Berliner, but a little deeper than that. Though Kennedy's legacy looms large for sure here in the city. The question was, how did I get here? So I guess it had a little bit to do with the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago is a place that people stay for a long time. And I had gotten 2 degrees. I'd worked there for 6 years, as you mentioned, in the public schools, representing the university in the public schools down on the South Side. And I needed a change. And also was a time in my life when my friends started to fade away. They got married and moved out of the city, or they got their PhD and got a job elsewhere. And so suddenly I was sort of left in a position of thinking, well, what am I going to do with myself? I was about 33 at that time. And so an opportunity came along to apply to the Robert Bosch Stiftung, the Robert Bosch Foundation, to be supported to come to Germany for a full year and look at, in my case, international education. And so I was able to do that. And I'm very grateful to the foundation ever since. Came to Berlin, started to learn German, and then had a sort of full year. I had 2 job placements and lots of training, a sort of mini diplomatic cultural training, along the way. So it was a great year and decided to stay.
You have German roots, no?
I have German roots. My grandparents lived in Hessen, just outside of Dieburg, or in Dieburg, which is a small town, closer outside of Darmstadt, in the area of Frankfurt on Main. They left in 1936. They fled to New Jersey, technically, but New York. And as a result of them fleeing, 2 years prior to coming here myself, I regained my German citizenship. So I am now a German Jew, American Berliner.
German Jew, American, absolutely. And how's Germany? And even though you're allowed in Germany, even though you're funny, because I feel that Germany, I mean Berlin, to some degree, we know, and I don't know if others know, that Berlin I always felt that Berlin in many ways is not really Germany.
It's Berlin not really Germany. It's a little bit like New York is to the rest of the United States. I'd say it's a unique place. However, there is something called the Berliner Schnauze, and that is meanness. It is coldness and meanness, and I would say it's a rough and tough kind of tumble attitude. So insults are a good way to start a conversation. Complaining is a good way to start a conversation, and then people lighten up and so that's what I've learned. Now that's changed a lot, I think, even in the time I've been here. No, but there is German comedy, and there's there's a different comedic sense, but I'm very proud to say that I can make the Germans laugh, at least at me, once in a while, for sure.
Take what you can get.
I will take what I can get.
How's Germany been dealing with how's Corona been dealt with in Germany, in your opinion?
It's slow going. It's just slow going when it comes to the vaccinations. I think that people are good about it. I think that people are respectful of the conditions and they slog through. It's a patient place as far as I can tell. I guess we all look at it through our own eyes. I myself have been patient and fortunate throughout the year. And so I suppose I'm imposing those thoughts on others. I know a lot of other people are not as patient and not as fortunate in terms of their financial stability, etc. But for me, I think we're doing okay. I think that the vaccination, it will take through the summer for sure to get the vaccinations to a place that they need to be, it seems, unless we have more variants or etc. So
yeah, I always look. I think those of us who live in Poland, obviously the Polish-German relationship, it's a bit of a latka hamantash situation, yes. Poland and Germany. But living here, I think you see countries that are generally good at stuff, right? They generally do things well. Germany in many ways, and this historically, for better and for worse, is well run, right? Things are efficient, like they are. The stereotypes that we shy away from in the United States, especially, are more prevalent in Europe, right? If you talk to the Swedes about the Danes, and this about this one group about the other, that the stereotypes about Germany being a very efficient place, people follow rules and regulations, to me would be one that would, in this case of Corona, be a positive in terms of dealing with it.
I would agree. I think one of the stereotypes that is a positive stereotype in this case is that the Germans are generally known for their planning and their thoroughness.
Well, yeah.
So things are planned well and they're communicated well, but they take time as a result. And you can overplan. I mean, there's something called analysis paralysis, and I think what we've seen in contrast between Germany and the United States is the United States threw a lot of money and a lot of efforts and a lot of hybrid efforts at getting these vaccines out there and into people's arms. And in Germany and the EU, they had a different approach, and they had much more planning. And also the fact that they decided to distribute the vaccinations EU-wide versus country by country and let the countries take care of themselves, which is laudable, but is slower.
Yeah,
so.
I think also Germany is interesting because you have a very, certainly a federal system in Germany where the states have a lot of independence.
Right.
I would guess less than in the United States. I sometimes feel in a situation like the Corona situation that we're going through now, the idea of one state having one policy versus another has been a tremendous hindrance to the efforts. In other words, there's in a place with no borders, you really need one cohesive policy. So has that been an issue in Germany or not really?
Well, I'm not an expert in German federalism, but it is interesting that it does seem that the states meet, and then under the power and leadership of Merkel, they're able to make decisions across the states because they don't want to make disparate decisions, and people will be traveling from one place to another or have different conditions from one state to another. So they seem to have begrudgingly come to some consensus over some basic rules and restrictions. There's always some differences between the state leaders, etc. But generally, it's pretty unified, and I think that sense of unity is they've seen that that's perhaps more important than some freedoms or liberties in one part of the country versus others.
Have you been vaccinated?
No, I have not. I have an appointment. I was sent a letter from the state. Berlin is a city-state, so the state technically of Berlin, I suppose, sent me the letter. And I do have an appointment on June 1st as a result of my status as a teacher. So when I fill out my tax returns, I have to list what my profession is. And for years, I've listed teacher or administrator. And as a result, I'm now in category 3. So June 1st, which is my Berlin birthday, actually the day I arrived here 15 years ago on June 1st, I arrived, and on this June 1st, I will be vaccinated for the first time.
Are you not considered an essential worker because of your work at the Institute?
It's actually very complicated in that the Institute, much like an embassy, is not part of Germany, although it is on German soil.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So you're operating in a somewhat extraterritorial, extrajudicial situation. So I
Exactly.
wonder who would even provide the vaccine to the thousands of people working there at the Institute.
If I can show you, I have a picture of the machine that we've been using. I see that that's now part of the classified files, but I'll bring it up for you in a moment.
Okay.
I think let me see if I can get that.
Listen, I don't want you to show anything that might get either.
No, that's okay. This is the machine that we've been using to vaccinate our staff.
Because I had read something, and maybe you can help with that, because people have all these wild things. Donald Trump sort of seemed to imply that one could inject themselves with bleach, but I did hear that eaten in the proper sequence, in other words, latka, hamantash, latka, in a certain way, which would also mimic the DNA code actually of corona, you could then render yourself immune to COVID-19.
Right. You're absolutely right. There's a very long string, very long string of L's and H's, the building blocks of all life. And that's exactly right, Jonathan. And the thing is, if you look closely here at the behind me, you'll see that we're actually we've moved beyond injections. We actually have a oral, if you will, vaccination, and we're just pumping it into beer bottles. So you'll see here, this is actually a beer bottling machine that has been converted, of course, for vaccination and immunization uses.
Excellent. I'm happy to see this progress. Leaving, it's interesting. No matter what we want to talk about, Benjamin. Obviously, like most conversations that I have in my life, revert back to latkes and hamantasze.
It's true. Yeah.
But I also, I want to talk a little bit about one of your or what you're working on lately, which to me is very fascinating and also maybe somewhat relevant for what we're doing here with the AMA, which is your Berlin School of Podcasting.
Yes, I can talk about that. I'd love to talk about that. Let me take you into our studio. This is the Berlin School of Podcasting studio where we make a lot of recordings. Jimi Hendrix also recorded here. We call it Electric Ladyland.
It looks a little bit like a Soho club.
Yeah. It's a nice place. So, I mean, I had a little money to invest, and so this is like just a small start for the Berlin School of Podcasting.
Modest, but a good start.
Thank you. No, more seriously, I am a big fan of podcasts, and so over a year ago, I thought, well, I went through a job transition. I got thrown out of my job under very strange circumstances, and I negotiated a very good settlement. I'm very open about these things. And this settlement gave me a year to play because I got paid, my contract was paid out. So I had a year to play, and then COVID hit. So this was sort of perfect timing. And I mentioned earlier, to be quite honest, about how I felt about COVID and how it's going, and that is my personal situation. So you understand. So this gave me some time to start building podcasts and broadcasting them, or posting them on the internet. And I found a few contracts and put some podcasts together. And while doing that, I was talking to a job coach, and she said something to me just off the cuff, which said, well, your resume is like you start schools and you work in education. So I suppose unless you want to reinvent yourself, you're going to have to make another school. And I joked like, well, even if I'm flipping burgers, then it's like the school of flipping burgers, or, if I'm whatever I'm going to do, it's the school of. And I kind of took that idea seriously and thought, well, if I wanted to run a school of anything, what would I run a school of? And I thought a school of podcasting sounds like a very good idea. And so we launched just a few weeks ago with our first class, and I have 11 wonderful people in my first cohort. And we're focusing very much on the humanistic side of podcasting, the storytelling. And so we're not tech heavy, not yet. We're very much focused on first listening. That's the fundamental skill that we bring first, and then we move into using our voices. And just in the past week, we've started to talk about stories and why stories are important and how we live our life with stories. And so we really have gone back to this humanities-based style, very focused on connection and creating a space for someone in a podcast to be there as a listener. So I love it. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I have some wonderful people in the class from all over the world, actually.
You talk about listening.
Yeah.
Do you mean to say the primary skill, if somebody's interested in podcasting, becoming a podcaster, that really being able to listen is first and foremost what you need to be able to do to do a podcast?
Yeah, I believe so, actually. I think that I think it's like any art. Like if you wanted to become a master chef, you need to eat a lot of really delicious food and taste a lot of different tastes and understand what techniques went into creating those culinary effects, if you will. And when we listen to podcasts, if they're done well, they wash over us. They're incredible. They just kind of come and go. They're seamless, but they're not seamless. There's a ton of work that went into making things sound that way. to making that mood come forward, to writing the script the way it flows, to give you clues in the beginning about what to listen for in the middle and in the end. So we're doing that kind of work to figure out how to be a good listener so that we can develop our sensibilities for what the techniques are that master podcasters use to make these things happen. And so that's why listening for me is so very important.
So if I can understand, you were essentially saying that being a podcaster, a good podcaster means being a good storyteller. But
yes.
Can you be, is it automatic? In other words, if somebody's a good storyteller, does that make them a good podcaster, or they need to be a good storyteller plus some other, what else do they need to be?
It depends on where they are involved in the production. I mean, if they're going to be doing the thing, from beginning to end, then just being a good storyteller is not enough, because there's technical aspects and there's writing that needs to be done, perhaps interviewing that needs to be done. Depends on the style of the podcast as well. If your podcast is just simply microphone on, you're able to talk for 20 minutes and tell a wonderful story, microphone off, and people like that and it's engaging, then sure, that's a podcast. The definition of podcast is so broad that it's a little bit difficult to say who's good or who will be good and who will struggle in different areas, because it depends on what format of podcast you want to take on.
And how does a podcast differ in terms of in terms of what's going on, different than radio?
That's a good question. First of all, podcasting generally is you have a lengthier period of time, right? So yes, there are lengthy radio pieces, but very little on the radio is longer than, say, even 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, right? So podcasts, you get to stretch out. You get 10, 20 minutes. Podcasts are serialized often, so you get to return to the theme, whether it's one theme that you keep exploring throughout the podcast, or a variety of themes. So I think there's one major difference between that and radio. Radio also tends to be, there's live radio and there's recorded radio, and so very very often there are live podcasts as well, but then they are stored and forever. So, but I think that there's much more similarity than difference in general between radio and podcasting. And I really come out myself as a listener. I come out of a radio background. I grew up listening to the radio and listening to stories on the radio in the United States, and then now in Germany.
Is WLVH still broadcasting?
WLVH?
Yes, the latkes hamantasze station that was very.
Sorry, I got thrown off. It's KL.
Sorry, it was west of the Mississippi.
Yeah, it was west of the Mississippi initially.
I apologize. It was KLVH.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just a stickler for these things. But yeah, certainly on the air all the time.
20. To me, I guess the difference for me, if I think about it now, just asking you, is that I think podcasts to some degree exist outside of time. Not that you can listen to it 1,000 years later necessarily. It could be topical, whereas radio is usually, even if it's not live radio, it's generally more connected to the time. I think the way that podcasts are meant to be digested, right? People just can sort of do it at their own. There's not an idea. Also, this idea that you're listening to it, everyone's not listening to it together.
That's right. They're not listening to it together. The other factor compared to radio is that, more and more of us listen to all audio over headphones, but radio traditionally was listened to over the air waves, right? First the air waves, and then over the air. You turn on the radio in the kitchen or in your house and you sit and you listen. Podcasts are generally consumed with headphones. Right. And so we had a very interesting conversation last night about headphones as like the new cave, if you will, right? A place where we're responsible for filling that cave, filling this very small space between one's ears with sound. But we sort of started with, the original stories that were told around the fire in the cave, and how we have to sort of think about that primordial moment of sitting and sharing a story, and that the headphones are the new space. And what does that space really mean? And so that's also another major difference, is that they're listened to on the go, they're listened to over headphones, they're stopped and they're started. Sometimes people listen to things, unfortunately, I must say, sped up. You can speed the podcast up if you want. If the person, you just want to sort of extract the information, yes, I do that too. If I'm watching YouTube videos to figure out how to hook up some piece of tech, I watch it like 1.25 speed, right? I mean, because I can track, and most everyone can. However, we would hope that when you're telling a real story, that's what we're really doing, is sharing time, and that time should happen at a human pace, and that pace is 1x.
Yeah, it's fascinating though, this idea of speeding it up, because I sometimes feel like I would just speed everything up around me. I would put, if I could do that, and we were in, and if I were able to program the matrix a little bit, I would probably want things to go at a 1.25 around. I think I'd be comfortable with the world at 1.25.
Right. Well, that's a classic sort of complaint, or a classic observation about technology, is that the world's has sped up ever since the steam engine, etc. The world is faster, and I find it myself. There are times where I find myself impatient, or I'm like, oh, that's enough relaxing. 20 minutes should do it, instead of, say, a few days. So.
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
as well. Is what I'm doing, could I throw this on the air? Would this be a podcast?
I think it would take some edits. I think you would have to narrow it down, and I maybe was not the best of guests, because I came in as my alter ego, the head of the institute, but yeah, you certainly.
I don't even know what you're talking about there. You must be having some kind of.
Sorry. Don't look behind the curtain. Yes, you certainly could. You certainly could do this as a podcast. But one thing that's important is to answer sort of some early questions about who is the podcast really for, what will you learn on the podcast, what will you talk about on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Defining the sort of mission statement of the podcast is useful. Even if it's a great conversation every time, it's useful to sort of say what it is and what it isn't, and who it's for, and why you're doing it. Why it's important, Why should people listen? Why should people care? That's an important question to ask whenever we put these things out there.
Is because I like hearing myself speak and seeing how clever I can be. Is that enough of a reason?
Depends how well you speak and how clever you are, Jonathan. But you got the chops. You would be doing fine. Yeah. You would be doing fine.
I would. I'm very interested. When you sent me the information, actually, I thought it was absolutely a fascinating thing, this idea of podcasting. And I think that even if you were to, storytelling is something that helps all of us, and no matter what our jobs are, or right. No matter what our hobbies are, it doesn't necessarily mean that the end result needs to be that you go and create a podcast. If I learn to be a better storyteller, it absolutely helps me in many ways.
That's absolutely the case. I mean, I must say, well, two things come to mind. I must say, as we move through the class, I have students, and there are some students that it's clear they're going to make something, and they might even go with this, and they might even make a series. There are other students who you can tell they're in this, they're into it, but it's going to be something like, that time you took the photography class, and then you took some photographs and you developed them, and they came out nicely, and you're very proud of this one portrait you made. But that's what you've done, But that's not a problem. When I'm running the class now, I've been talking about making, because the name of the class is step 1. The name of the class is step 1 because you just make the first piece that's, quote, radio ready, going back to radio. So you make something that, is listenable, is tolerable, is good. It shows off your chops. Is it the world's greatest podcast? No, but it's an apprentice piece. It's the first thing that you're doing, right? So I explained the other night, if I, after a few months or a year, learned how to play Jailhouse Rock on the guitar and kind of could mimic Elvis and kind of pull it off, that's good. That's fine. You got to start somewhere, right? Right. And I think everyone is doing that. And so a few of my students have said, I'm really into actually a particular person who's actually a master at this, Krista Tippett. And many of your listeners, I'm sure, will know who she is.
I know Krista Tippett, yeah.
Yeah. And I said to them, if you can replicate a Krista Tippett episode, if you can do that, if you can interview like Krista Tippett for 20 minutes, that's a huge success to accomplish in just 6 or 7 weeks, right? So that's the kind of attitude of step one. It's not mastery. It's step one. It's like make something good.
I'm sorry. Can you give me a couple of very quick hints, tips?
Yeah. Toward what end?
Podcasting tips.
Podcasting tips
that I'm using. In other words, okay, for example, I have an hour to fill every week. I've done it 57. This is 57 weeks in a row. So that's 57 hours of live content.
That's a lot.
What could you tell me live? And okay, they go on YouTube after, so they exist forever, unless they're really bad, in which case they somehow disappear. But I don't know, in terms of interviewing, in terms of something, could you give me a couple of quick hints, tips?
Well, I think that most of the people that you interview, they know you, right? These are not cold interviews, right?
Correct.
Okay, but a tip for most people is that usually when you interview someone, you're facing a stranger, right? Or you're facing sort of an awkward situation. So there's a notion of hosting, that you're hosting the conversation, and that you start, yes, you roll the tape from moment one, but a lot of time can be spent just settling the person in, talking with them, making sure they have what they need, explaining why you're interviewing them so that they're comfortable, and you bring them forward. And you can ask them some questions just to warm up their voice and make them as comfortable as possible. And some of those questions, depending on the nature of the podcast and the depth of the podcast, can be very personal, to try to get the person to speak a little bit more from their heart than from their mind. Because actually what drives us and what makes podcasting special is the intimacy that you can derive from the medium. Because again, it's this cave in our head, just right here. It's very close in the ear. That's a very intimate moment.
So it's very different, this very different idea of people being inside your head than being all around you.
Right. And look how distracting. I mean, I'm a good case in point, right? Look how distracting all these visuals are. I mean, look at us, right? I mean, you got a lot going on there behind you. You're just like every other person, complicated thing to look at. I'm a complicated thing to look at. I've been playing all these games, right? But if it's truly a podcast, all that's gone, right? All that's gone, and we just are going to a place of listening. So,
Benjamin, as we're just, I'm sorry, running out of time. I usually at the end, this is very helpful, and I will use that. I usually, I kind of fight against this idea of thinking that I'm always better off the cuff and spontaneous, and I want to keep things sort of away. So I've tried to, what I need to do is always balance those two. So for 56 weeks in a row, I've asked my guests whether they're on Team Latka or Team hamantash. Now, of course, the last thing I would do, Benjamin, sir, would be to even broach the subject with you.
Can't even broach the subject.
Maintain the ultimate paragon of neutrality here. So I will skip that question, and I will go right to my final question. What are your 3 favorite films?
Okay. I will address the Latka hamantash question.
Mm-hmm.
I must say that for many years, when I was young and foolish, and I'm not so young anymore, still very foolish, I was a Latka lover. Over the years, and thanks to many of the Team hamantash players, I have come to realize that there is a true balance, a true yin and yang between these two. And so I am now officially neutral, but I also am very neutral also in my heart. And that's also because of the people I know on these two sides of the debate. And so I have a relationship with those two foods, but I also have a relationship with the supporters of those two foods.
Considering you took a long time to not answer a question, I told you didn't have to.
Yes, I'll admit that I'm not a person of film.
Oh, do you not have 3 films? So have you seen 3 films?
Yes.
Those would be, if you've seen only 3 films, then by definition, those would be your 3 favorite films.
Okay, yeah. I knew you would answer. I knew you would ask me this question, and I put it out of my mind because it's a strange part of my personality.
What are your 3 favorite songs?
Oh, Mo'otsua.
Clearly.
Clearly.
All the refrains.
I'm a big music fan. So much to the point that I do not say what is favorite. But last night I listened to Joan Armatrading's "Barefoot and Pregnant," which is an incredible piece of music. So that's one for now, for today.
Okay.
I must admit, I'm a huge fan of the blues. So the Buddy Guy, Junior Wells combination is something I just knocks my socks off. I told you I went back to Chicago just for that. And I did. And I met those 2 characters while I was there. So, Chicago blues is very important to me. I could name various songs, but, that's an idiom that I'm very much into.
Yeah. I will accept that as your 3 favorite films.
And I'll give you a film. I'm a big fan of The Bicycle Thief.
Woohoo. Very highbrow. University of Chicago, baby, in the house.
That's right.
Professor.
But films, people are astounded. I'm not a person. I'm looking at you on a screen. We do not watch screens for entertainment in our house. And that is not like because we made a rule. It's just that we don't watch television. We don't have streaming. We read books and listen to music and play music.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. I would like to be more like that. We don't have a TV, but we do watch stuff like on the laptop and the projector. So it's sort of like, I don't mind TV as something providing you with information or with things that you choose. I don't like the passive aspect of TV, that somebody will just have a TV on or something. Always bothered me. But I wish I were a little more disciplined and could avoid screens altogether. But I'm with you on that. Yeah. Benjamin Lorch, thank you as always. We will be in touch about this year's LVH. We're working on it here in Krakow, and thank you for being such a friend and such a friend to the institution.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. If I have a minute to fill in the end, I just want to thank you for inviting me on, but also for all the work you've done there at the JCC. You are a real inspiration to me, and I really love you very deeply, and I must say that. And to watch that place grow and to watch all the efforts you've made, but you have stayed true to the way you are, and it's not an easy thing that you're working on, and I really appreciate all the work you've done and the community you've grown. And you mentioned a little bit about my past and where I'm from and where I'm going and where we're all from in this diasporic world. But for you yourself, you made me also a little bit of a citizen of Krakow. And I really appreciate all the hosting and all the work that you've done with your team there, and particularly the team also at the JCC, an incredible group of people. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, really, for real.
Thank you, my friend. Be well, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Take care. See you at the debate.
See you. Bye, everybody.